in Sundown, your newest feature film, you make some kind of a transition into the family microcosm. And I wanted to ask you, why have you decided to portray a more intimate story instead of just going, let's say, all the way again?
Uh, to be honest, I never think of a film before I write it in terms of scale.
Mm-hmm.
There's always that first seed, that first idea. In New Order, I wanted to make a film about what would happen if a country explodes into that sort of social rest and everything that happens in the film. So it had to be that way. Some people would say how to make New Order more intimate. Like, how do you, because it's a nightmare to produce such a big movie. But I knew I had to make it that way. There was no way of changing it. In this case, it was always about what if a man stays behind? What if a man doesn't go to the mother's funeral and everything that happens in the movie? And I always knew it had to be in Acapulco. It's intimate, but I always thought from the beginning, I knew it had to be on the real beach with real people. So it's intimate, but it's out there on the beach. So I just want to make sure when I'm about to write a film that I'm interested in what I'm about to do, and in that way I have this commitment to go all the way. But I don't care about the scale. Yeah.
I kind of understand this film as like you're depicting a problem of some sort of masculinity crisis in a really sublime manner. I don't know if you know that, but the whole topic really corresponds with the situation in Poland, where there are like a lot of men who are struggling with ongoing depression. And I wanted to ask you, why did you choose this particular theme? Like, was there any personal need to maybe confront your own demons?
Yes, I I was in a very deep personal crisis when I wrote this film. I feel better now. I guess making the film helped. It's one of the advantages of being a filmmaker. I wrote this before shooting New Order. So on one hand, I was unsure if I was gonna be able to pull off that movie because of the scale. And I was approaching 40. I was turning 40. And I was asking myself the big questions and trying to see if I was happy about where I was in my life, if things were going in the in the right direction, if I was happy, or whatever bullshit one asks. But since I'm a filmmaker, I made a movie about it, so it was productive at least.
It's good to hear that you're better. I also wanted to ask about your casting, because was Tim Roth your first choice for New Bonnet? I know you worked with him in 2015 on your film Chronic, which is also very grasping and harrowing, but his performance differs here.
Tim and I were very close friends. We've been friends for more than 10 years, since he discovered After Lucia at the Cannes Film Festival and gave it the award at Certain Regard. And so since then, even when I'm writing a film that he's not gonna act on, because like April's Daughter, it's for a woman, he's one of the first friends to read the script and we discuss it. Having said that, when I write a character that he could fit in, I immediately write for Tim. I love working with him. And I knew when I was writing Sundown that he would relate to the character, because we have very similar sensibilities in many ways. And I was right. When he read it, he said, "Don't change a thing, let's just shoot it." I wrote it quite fast within this depression that I was referring to. So I sent it to him, and we really wanted to shoot it as quick as possible, because he identified himself with what the character is going through.
In this film, I kind of see him as a very vulnerable actor, and one that in Sundown is basically exposed to some kind of external effects, like his mother's death. But these situations, let's say, collapse his previous sense of reality and lead to the appearance of apathy. I was curious, how did you work with Tim on achieving that, let's say, near mute status? Because he's not using a lot of dialogues.
No, he always, I know how to write for him, and I know that he likes silence, and that's why he liked After Lucia so much. So since I wrote Chronic, and especially on Sundown, we always say as little dialogue as possible, because dialogue, when it's good dialogue, is fantastic, but often dialogue is only used to explain everything to the audience, and it limits the reach that a good performance can have, and it, you know, less dialogue often makes it more cinematic, because you have to find other ways to look into the character, and for Tim that's always challenging in a good way. He's always saying strip the dialogue, less dialogue, um don't feed everything to the audience as information. You know, we think that's very mediocre, so we always push ourselves. You know, I push him and he pushes me to be more extreme and to try things, and I think Sundown in that way is a very radical movie.
Charlotte Gainsbourg, who plays his sister, appears to be an emotional counterpoint for him, because when she cries, he seems to be callous. When she grieves after her mother's death, he literally stays to extend his vacation to Mexico. Is it his way to deal with the loss, or is it the issue of his lack of emotional empathy? Sorry.
I for me, he's always been like that since he was a kid. We don't talk much about the backstory, but we do. He does say to Charlotte, "The business is yours. You always been involved in the business." I think he always took the back seat in life, so to speak. And at this point, where he's facing like important, you know, an important episode in his life, it comes to the open in a stronger way. The fact that that's his nature. Having said that, he does fall in love with this woman that he meets, so he's open to new stuff. He's not closed down. And he loves Charlotte's character. He loves the sister. He loves the children. It's just hard for him to make sense, to find the meaning of things at this point.
I guess one can argue that Sundown is rather a radical picture where men kind of cannot cope with their feelings, and in your film it kind of leads them to some unexpected solutions that affect their current lives. And I wanted to ask you, do you use such extreme narration to underline the overall problem of men's mental health? Or maybe your creative assumption was focused on something else?
I guess it has to do with the balance, with finding one's place. Mental health is a part of it, of course. I guess it's also about how frail we are, fragility, and about how everything can change so fast in life, within yourself, but also I like putting Tim's character where he's finding it hard to make sense in a place like Acapulco, where violence turned out to be, you know, something that happens on a daily basis, and people accept it. So that's also very unnatural, and that changes the balance of things. And I like that mix of Tim's character in that environment.
And was it difficult to gain Tim's trust during those years of your friendship, or maybe developing your friendship kind of helped you to lead him to new directions in your films?
It definitely helps to get things started. We always want to be together. I always miss shooting with Tim. Having said that, sometimes because we became such close friends when we're shooting, sometimes we argue more than I do with actors that are not such close friends. You know, you fight more, or not fight, but you have longer arguments with your wife or your kids, or and that happens sometimes between Tim and I. We end up having longer arguments, but they're always interesting, and they always make the work better. Yeah.
I know he's also the co-producer of your films, right? So it also kind of states that there are no trust issues in a relationship. When we experience the main revelation, we can argue that Sundown is also about the denial, about some kind of immense pride in not admitting their fragility. Do you recall any personal experiences when you had some difficulties with accepting your own anxieties? You also mentioned that you are struggling a lot.
Absolutely. I remember exactly when the idea to make Sundown came to me. I was approaching 40, and it's a death or the end of life has always, interested me, like chronic, chronic is about that. So I'm not gonna say at 40 I discovered the fact that life ends. But within that depression of some sort of middle life crisis, I started to see the end, hopefully very far away, at the very end of the tunnel, hopefully a very long tunnel. But I started to, to feel, to understand that's where we're inevitably going. So I don't know, it's scary, I would like to live 200 years. So, I love life, so it's always grim to think of how frail we are. A big question is, are we really free? I think something I didn't know that Sundown was about, and I found out through making the movies, the fact that nobody's really free, because Tim's character is making certain decisions to protect himself. He's doing what he thinks he needs to do. And turns out that love also ties you down because of the people you love and people who loves you. Turns out that you're not free, it turns out to be some sort of chains.
And I also wanted to digress and ask you, because I was curious, was it crucial for you to place Neil, who is a Londoner? He's from United Kingdom, just like Tim Roth, in Mexico. And is your country like a secondary hero of that film, or maybe an anti-hero?
It's definitely a main character. If for whatever reason I wouldn't have been able to shoot the movie in Acapulco, I wouldn't have shot it. The place is as important as Tim's character, and that combination is essential to the film. The fact that life is not appreciated somehow in Acapulco, or, it's some sort of Wild West. The fact that he's a foreigner and he doesn't speak the language, the combination of those elements was key to like I said, I wouldn't even have shot the film if for whatever reason Acapulco wasn't available.
Despite his life choices, did you manage to find some sympathy towards his character?
I sympathize all the way with him. I mean, at the beginning, it seems like some sort of fantasy what he's doing, which is a bit naive, and women find it harder to, women understand that it's gonna be a disaster. For men, it's some sort of fantasy that quickly drops. But I understand what he does all the way through the film, all the way through the end. Absolutely.
Do you treat Neo as some sort of your alter ego?
No, I mean, no. I see myself in all of the characters. I think I would relate more with the sister. I'm more similar to Charlotte's character than to Tim's. No, I wouldn't say it's an alter ego. But when I'm writing, I try to understand. I put myself in every character's shoes, and I try to sympathize with all of them. I never write like this is a good character and this is a bad one. They're all full of flaws, and they all make mistakes because that's life, and that's of course the best source for drama and for for cinematic elements.